Let's talk about Hong Kong, about what's going on there right now. I'm starting to get questions about this. Hey, Caleb, you still want to go to Hong Kong? Do you still like Hong Kong? Is that still your favorite place? There's riots in Hong Kong. They got like protests and shit. They're shutting down the airport and shit. What's up? You still want to go there? So let's talk about this first in terms of what's happening globally, and then we'll narrow it down to what's happening in Hong Kong. So right now, globally, the good news is, and I've mentioned this before, is that most medium and small, not most, but many medium and small countries are actually embracing free markets. They're embracing rule of law. They're embracing capitalism. It's a good thing. Freedom is actually getting better around the world in terms of the medium and small countries outside of the large countries. So that's the good news. It's great. And I'm very impressed. I'm in a hotel room right now, as you can probably see, and I'm in Dallas, Texas, and I'm on my way to Brazil tonight and then Paraguay the next day, and some fun things going on down there in South America. But in a lot of places, a lot of the smaller countries, freedom is actually increasing, which is very promising, very nice. Outside of the large countries, which brings us to our problem, which is the large countries. So not only do we have a scenario where we are watching the Western world collapse as we watch, we can't really see this yet in the United States. It actually is collapsing, but you can't tell unless you start looking at the key numbers and economic indicators and all those types of things. Europe is a different story. We're actually watching Europe collapse as we speak. That's interesting. But anyway, not only do we have a scenario where the West is starting to collapse, we also have a scenario where the large, in terms of population size, the large countries, the really large, powerful ones, are starting to embrace authoritarianism. They're actually going the opposite direction of these other smaller countries that are embracing more free markets. So that includes the United States. The United States, on a semi-regular basis, I get guys on my blogs who say, you know, wouldn't it be cool, Caleb, don't you admit it'd be kind of cool to just have an authoritarian government as long as Donald Trump was in charge? Don't you admit that'd be pretty cool? And these are the small government conservatives, or what used to be, right? So you've got a scenario in the United States now where you've got millions and millions of people who would think, an authoritarian government under Hillary Clinton, well, shit, that'd be hell on earth. But an authoritarian government under Donald Trump, hey, I'd give that a shot. That might be pretty good. I'd try that. God damn. Now, I don't want to pick on the right-wingers. Left-wingers are just as bad. You would have guys who say things like, oh my God, an authoritarian government under Donald Trump, that'd be, oh my God, it'd be a nightmare. Everyone, we'd all die. But an authoritarian government, if Bernie Sanders was in charge, that might be pretty good. I might try that. All right. Okay, now, that's the sentiment you've got in the United States and a lot of the other larger countries. Russia is moving toward authoritarianism, although they already are. They're moving more that way. India is moving toward authoritarianism. The crap that they're doing in Kashmir right now is absolutely ridiculous. It's a travesty. And if you're from India, you should be ashamed of what they're doing. That's a nightmare. Okay? And of course, you've got China, who's moving toward more authoritarianism with President Xi and lifetime president for life. Oh, that's just great. So, in terms of Hong Kong is owned by China. It's a separate country, but it is owned by China. And unfortunately, you've got Hong Kong, which is the one of the two freest countries on the planet, owned by one of the more authoritarian countries on the planet. And that's why you've got these protests. So, do I agree with the protesters? For the most part, yes, but partially no. It's a little complicated. So first off, the initial thing that started all this stuff was criminals being extradited from Hong Kong into China. That's insane. And of course, I agree 100% with the protesters. I'm on their side on that one. You need to stay out, China, when I say you. China needs to stay out of Hong Kong's business. Leave Hong Kong alone. Let Hong Kong make you the money, and let Hong Kong continue to be the golden goose, or one of many now for China, and stop messing with it and leave it alone, particularly judicially. So hell yes, I am in complete solidarity with those protesters. Hong Kong needs to be independent as possible from China, of course. Do whatever you want in China, but leave Hong Kong alone, okay? Come on, Jesus Christ. Now, in terms of the other stuff, this is where it gets complicated. This is very similar to how I felt about the Occupy Wall Street protesters. So back a few years ago when that was going on, they would get up and they would say, big business has too much authority in politics. And I'd be like, yes, you're right. And income inequality is insane. It's too high in the United States. Yes, you're right. I agree 100%. And we need to get money out of politics, and the corporations need to stop running our government. Yes, you're right. And we need to stop bailing out the banks. Yes, you're right. And we need a bunch of free shit. What? Yeah, we need free college and free healthcare, and we should get free money too. Okay, that's where you lost me. So it's very similar with these protesters in Hong Kong. When they talk about Hong Kong independence and China staying out of Hong Kong, I'm in 100% agreement. Absolutely. When they start talking about being more democratic, being a democracy, as I've written about before, and you can Google Caleb Jones' blog, Freedom or Democracy, Choose One. There's a whole article I wrote about this, okay? When people say democracy, what they're really saying is higher taxes, bigger welfare state. That's because that's what you get every time a country embraces democracy. And I will prove it. The two freest countries in the world, by every index, by every account, by almost every ranking system, are almost always Hong Kong and Singapore. Sometimes Hong Kong is number one, sometimes number two, and same thing with Singapore. These are not democracies. So every democracy in the world is less free than the two most free countries in the world, Hong Kong and Singapore, okay? Singapore is not free at all. Singapore is not a democracy. Most people in Singapore can't vote because it's not a democracy, yet it is comparatively the number one or number two freest country in the world. Hong Kong is also not a democracy, or it's a partial democracy. Most people there can vote, but half of their legislature is appointed. You can't vote for them. So it's because it's not a democracy. And there has been an ongoing debate in Hong Kong, and if you live in Hong Kong, you already know this, between the older people in Hong Kong and the younger people in Hong Kong. And the younger people want democracy, okay, and fine. And the older people are saying, you want to be a democracy? You want to have tax rates like Europe? You want to pay a 40-50% income tax instead of a whatever Hong Kong has now, 18% flat tax? Are you insane? Why do you want that? It's crazy. And the kid's like, we want democracy. We want more. They don't say free stuff, but that's the implication. And again, that's part of the problem. These protesters are young people, which is great. But are young people small government libertarians, or do they tend to be left-wingers? These people are left-wingers. So they want more democracy, which is another way of saying they want bigger government, higher taxes, bigger welfare state, more regulation and things like that, which will take Hong Kong from its number one, number two spot in the world in terms of freedom and start dropping it down. You're going to make Hong Kong worse if you embrace democracy. So I agree 100% that China needs to leave you guys alone. I agree 100% with that. When you guys start screaming about democracy, you're forgetting that you are number one, number two in the world in terms of freedom, in terms of any other country on the planet. And if you embrace democracy, you are damaging and harming that thing, that one thing, or at least one of many things that makes Hong Kong so special. So I'm against the protesters on the issue of democracy because I care more about their freedom than they do.